No. Yeah. Hey, Kathy Spooner here. So, welcome everyone. I am very excited to have my guest, Jessica Buckholz, on to talk about her work and my work with integrating parents into the play therapy process as crucial partners in the process. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Just some lessons learned about play therapy, expressive arts, and how to effectively engage parents, and really how that is a game changer for children and adolescents being able to make progress in the play therapy process or the treatment process. So I'm Kathy Spooner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapy supervisor. And I have been in the mental health field for 30 years now. And I love using play therapy and expressive arts with children, adolescents, and families because I really am a huge believer in the therapeutic powers of play and how that really effectively helps children engage in the healing process. So I go live every Wednesday at 7 a.m. Pacific time and talk about all things play therapy and expressive arts. And I go live in LinkedIn, YouTube, and my private Facebook group for mental health professionals, which is called Play and Expressive Arts Therapy Playground. So if you find this information helpful, please like and share it across your social media platforms. And my goal is to really empower child and adolescent play therapists to use play therapy and expressive arts with their clients to help you really use your unique gifts integrated with play therapy and expressive arts, because I am a firm believer that healthy families create healthy communities, and it starts with the work that we're doing with children. So my goal is to provide training, supervision, and consultation using play therapy and expressive arts so you can tap into your therapeutic superpowers and help families heal. So I met Jess about a year ago, I think, when Jasper came to a training that I was doing. It was a live in-person training, which was really nice to do an in-person training. And then we just kind of connected, and Jess was in my supervision group for a while. And she has now begun her official journey into the marriage and family therapy world. So Jess, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I just graduated in May with
Woohoo!
my degree in marriage and family therapy. And I am officially an associate MFT now. So that feels fun.
Yeah.
When I first started my program, I did not want to work with kids.
I
I
just find that so funny.
I know. Well, I have two kids. I have a 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old, and I'd go to the park and I'm like, I don't like other people's kids. I don't want to play with other people's kids. And then I started getting kid clients just as an intern, trying everything out. And I was like, I do like other people's kids, and I love playing. And I think that there is so much good to be done when you can work with kids, if you can help them on their healing process before they get all this baggage and things that could be prevented. So I love it. I have really had so much fun getting into play therapy and expressive arts. It keeps things exciting all the time.
Yeah. And I love your passion for the play therapy and expressive arts and working with children and healing. I think that's one of the things that I've really admired about you. And I've enjoyed working with you, seeing that passion that you have for children. And you are a huge go getter. So, of course, I
Thank
like that
you.
too, because I'm kind of a go getter. Um, the downside of being a go getter is we get really tired sometimes.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
last weekend, I just crashed. So I kind of took the weekend off and slept a lot. But yeah, and I know you're kind of taking some downtime too. So I think that's, something we have to keep in mind when you're a passionate person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was really passionate for 2 years getting my master's degree, and I gave myself about a month of crash.
Yes, that's awesome. Yep. Cool. So if anybody is, if you're on and you're watching live, well, I'd love to see who's here. Go ahead and post your name in the comments. Post your name, where you're from, what population you work with. We'd love to hear your experiences working with children, what your questions are, and some of the things that you've encountered. So go ahead and post those in the comments, and let's get the process started. So one of the things that I have been, I actually started my graduate program in 1990, which I'll be honest, it feels like that should only be 10 years ago, like minus 22, but it doesn't feel like it should be that long ago. Like I started graduate school before there was an internet.
I don't know if this is bad, but maybe it dates both of us a little. That was a year before I was born.
I know. I hear that a lot these days.
So
Yeah.
you've been doing it for a long time. You
Yeah.
have the knowledge and the experience.
Well, honestly, I first got introduced to play therapy when I was in special education as a teacher in the 80s. And we really didn't have internet then. We were video games and computers were just becoming something people had in their homes. Like in my classroom, my special ed class, we had a computer and we had like educational learning games, which I had no idea how to use. I do not like video games. I am not going to lie. Even Pac-Man, my friends would want to play and I'd be like, shoot me. I don't know why I don't like video games. I don't like video games. I might be the only person on the planet, but I think there's others my age that don't like video games. Yeah.
I don't really either.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I'm not the only one. Yeah, I'm just not a big video game fan. But those were all brand new. So just honestly, there's things over time that don't change. Like some things change, like technology, but families and children and the needs of children and what they need for healing, those don't change. And that's what got me hooked. Back in when I was teaching, is seeing how play therapy, because the school social worker and psychologist had learned this thing called play therapy. And I was like, I don't even know what therapy is. Play therapy. It's just blocks. What the heck? And then she did a group with my kids. And I saw when I was in the group and I just saw what a huge change there was. And so that's the thing for me, even over the last 30 plus years in the mental health field, because I worked in a residential program prior to that. There are things that don't change. And what doesn't change is children need their parents or their caregivers or guardians or whoever is in that parenting role. And we know that from decades of attachment and family therapy research that children need their parents. And I think one of the things that I've noticed in since I actually got started in play therapy, it took me forever to find it. Back in the early 2000s, most of the focus in the play therapy arena is really on individual play therapy. And I use individual play therapy, and I'm sure you probably use individual play therapy as well. And so I always find it important for us to figure out how we're doing that decision making, as far as if I'm doing individual, how am I going to integrate parents? And what I find is that doesn't happen a lot. So I'm curious for you, and I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, but what were some of your challenges? Because you're learning as well. What were some of the challenges that you were experiencing about engaging parents, and what were some of the lessons you learned about that? And I know you were in your master's program, they have a focus on play therapy, so maybe even some of the things some of your fellow students were trying to figure out as well, because you're in an MFT program, marriage and family counseling. So I'm sure that was on the conversation regularly.
Yeah. So when I think of the struggles that I had, kind of two big ones. One was a more personal thing. I initially found myself kind of getting triggered in sessions with certain types of parents.
Yeah.
And I would go into supervision and be like, I can't work with this family. I can't work. This mom is just wow, or wow, this family. And I realized that it was a me thing and that I needed to kind of figure out my own stuff, and that I needed to be able to keep myself out of that and recognize when I'm being triggered. And that's the time that I need to be more compassionate and more understanding to these parents that I'm having a hard time with, or this family, and that I'm struggling because of things that happened in my childhood. And if these, thinking about like my parents now, they would have loved to have had a therapist who could have been kind and compassionate and to help them and guide them through those things. So if I automatically close myself off to that, they're not getting that help. So that was my first really big thing to figure out, was that I need to not let my own struggles affect how I'm feeling about working with a family.
Honestly, Jess, oh my gosh, I was like jumping up and down. I'm like, oh my God, that's so true. It's so true. And good for you for recognizing that right away. I think that is such an important thing. For the record, it doesn't really ever go away. You just get better at managing it. Um, you know, but that's such a good point. And I think that's one of the things that I'll say I kind of get frustrated, but it's not really frustration as much as it kind of hurts. Like I'm one of those like deep feeling people. It's my superpower and it's my kryptonite. It's so freaking annoying sometimes when you cannot turn off everybody's feelings because you're picking up on everything. Um, but for me, it, like you said, you can't be there for them. And here's the other thing about that. That's what we want to teach parents.
Yeah.
We want to teach them that they're going to get triggered. That's that. I always I like to use a neuroscience and attachment lens, that whole co-regulation piece. And Daniel Siegel talks about those resonance circuits, our ability to tune in. But part of those resonance circuits are understanding that we're two separate people. Mm-hmm. So I have to recognize what's me and what's not me. And like you were saying, in the therapeutic process, that is so key to be able to, because my husband he's not a therapist. And because I was like, I am not marrying a therapist because I do not want people calling me out of my crap. Anyway, calls me out of my crap anyway. But that's one of the things my husband regularly would say to me early on is like, you're not a robot. You're going to have feelings.
Yeah.
Like, what? How do you not know that? Kind of. But he was always very kind about it. But yeah, I think good for you as well, getting that early and recognizing that, because I think, one of the things you said too that I think is really, really important is that here's how I interpreted it. Your desire to use more of an attachment framework, relational framework, meaning I need to build rapport with parents. If professional, of course, because we got to keep those boundaries, and there's a way to do that where this is where I like DBT, acceptance and change. They're doing the best they can, and they can do better, but they're not going to do better unless they feel like I care about them.
Yeah.
and I see them, because I'm not going to be able to use that relationship unless I can get them to facilitate, I'm not going to get them to take me up on my suggestions unless they feel confident and safe.
Yep.
So good for you. That's awesome. That's huge.
Well, it doesn't mean that it was all smooth sailing. There were quite a few uncomfortable sessions and families that just stopped showing up.
Yeah.
I'm working through it, and I'm feeling like I'm getting in a better spot with that, and I have that awareness to be able to implement it now, I guess.
Yeah.
Implementing.
Good for you, though. And, that's a really good point, too. And I think that's the other thing that I really admire about you is your honesty and your authenticity. Because honestly, it's true. We get triggered. We do. And we have to manage our own triggers, and we have to be honest about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes people aren't going to stay.
Yeah.
And
as you were talking, I thought some of the things that my professors have said is like, it's okay for me as a clinician to have feelings and to even like bring it up with clients. If I feel like, I don't think that in those sessions that I had feelings was ever in like a good enough place to not feel like I was trying to have my own therapy. But how cool it would be to address that and use it as kind of a modeling, like, okay, from me to you, that's the same as you to your child. That to do the co-regulation, to be there for them and to help them make the changes that you're hoping for, you're going to have to realize when you're triggered and to manage that for you and to address it and to apologize.
Right? Absolutely. To me, in order to have that level of relationship with parents, we have to have a framework that we operate out of and a plan. Like I remember, I'm sure I was annoying sometimes in our supervision group. Like, what's your plan with that? I don't know if you saw my face sometimes going,
No, that's actually was my second struggle that I was going to say, was that I struggled, and I think that parents struggled initially without necessarily a strong plan or framework. And we've talked about that in supervision. And because in my program, having relational hours and being with the family was a big focus, I would, if there was ever family, like, let's just all get in the therapy room. And you'd be like, why are they there? What's your plan? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just supposed to see a family. So I think that working under that umbrella was a little bit chaotic, and that was a struggle to feel like parents had confidence in me knowing what I was doing or in themselves of knowing how they're supposed to engage and what I expect for them to do, what they need to be doing there. So yes, that was something that I gained hugely from supervision, was that strong push to have a plan, to have a framework, and to be intentional in using the families. And that has helped so much, immensely, to be able to have a plan and communication and give people directions on what to expect.
Did you notice a difference in that, how the therapy was going so one of the things I love about you is your just willingness to try it. I think that's awesome. And I think, I'm curious for you is if you noticed a difference when you started to think more intentionally about who was in there, what the plan for them in there, like what were you hoping to accomplish?
Yeah. Yes. I going from like trying to do child-centered play therapy with a mom just sitting on the couch to being able to say like, hey, this is how we're going to engage, or like, I want to work on the attachment. I want you guys to be doing this. Just, I was very apprehensive to be directive to parents, I think, in the child-centered framework, because it's like, oh, just, they're in charge, I just follow. But also, I think that parents need to know what is happening, what to expect, and how they can be involved. And I think that it's really doing a disservice when we don't give them that, because they can be so much more than the parent sitting on the couch on their phone, or just, sitting there watching, when, like, I'm not the person that matters. I don't need to be attaching strongly to this child as they need to with their family, with their parents especially, so that they can move forward for the rest of their lives that they're going to be together, because I'm just here for a finite blip in their timeline.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I think that what happens if we don't have that plan is that parents do get confused. Um, they start to think maybe this isn't working, or I don't know what the therapist is doing, or they just kind of check out and say to themselves, this I'm not the important person here, the therapist is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's backwards. They're the important person. Therapists are important. Like, they come to us. I call it, I tap into my inner Yoda and my inner Gandalf. I'm the wise guide, not wise guy. The wise guide to help parents, you know, help their child.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I think if we don't have a plan for engaging clients, parents, then kind of the message we send without saying it with our words is, I'm the one who's going to be the big change for your child. And not to say that isn't true, because it is, because play therapists, we are the therapeutic agent of change when it's individual counseling, but we're not the therapeutic agents of change. That's their parents, like you said. They're there for the rest of that child's life, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I recently I had a new child client, and it was the first time I've had a new client in a while, because I've been pretty full. And so this was the first time really since, like, developing my plan of being like, "Okay, gonna be more directive." And I was a little apprehensive, because I guess I'm still working through all my stuff, and kind of a little scared of grown-ups sometimes, even though I'm the grown-up. It's confusing. But I told her, like, "Okay, I am, like, you brought your child to me for me to be their therapist. So I want to make sure that they feel safe with me. I want to make sure that they feel safe here in the room. And sometimes they might want to be alone with me, because they'll be able to tell me the things that they wouldn't, or do the things they wouldn't when parents are in the room.
Right.
And when we come back together, you might not like it, because I'm going to be the advocate for the child, because they're the one that needs an advocate in the room right now. And it's not always going to be fun, but that is how we work together to achieve the changes that you're hoping for, is because you're part of a system. A child in and of itself is never the problem, but there are problems in the system that need to be addressed. And when everyone's involved, you can make those changes with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how do you usually find that goes when you have those really direct, and I don't, do you have that conversation with the child present, or just with parents, or how do you find that goes? And what do you think helps them to be able to receive that?
I think it that was my first real, like, time since I've conceptualized my framework, and it was received really well.
Oh, good.
I think that it has to be done. There has to be a level of joining and trust that's already occurred before that
Yeah.
conversation happens,
Agreed. Yeah.
because that and honesty. I mean, that's my thing, is, like, I'm not going to undermine you as a parent, or tell your kid to do things opposite of how you're trying to parent them, but if they're having things come up, we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to make sure that their voice is heard.
Yeah.
So that might not be what is normally happening at home if the kids are just supposed to listen and not speak up. But in therapy, when you want for changes to be happening with your child, we're going to make sure that that voice gets heard.
Yeah. And I think, ultimately, if parents are voluntarily bringing their child as opposed to trying to avoid some unpleasant consequences happening
Yeah.
legally, um, I think most parents recognize that they do need help, which is why, like, I had somebody coming yesterday, and um, we had a conversation, and what needs to happen. Parents are going to be actively involved, who's going to be part of that process, and also here's how it works. So I think part of what we're doing is providing a little psychoeducation
Yeah.
to parents, because they're not therapists. They don't
Yeah.
know how it works unless they've been in therapy a lot, but sometimes they haven't. Like, I had a family come in yesterday, they've never been to therapy at all. And I had to have conversations about, here's how things are going to work. And I had to have a conversation about something came up in the session. This is a screening, and I had to say, if you do that again, I have to do this. I'm a mandated reporter. And then I also try to make sure because the mom came, her mother, I could just see her mother's heart wanted to help her kids. There's so many multi-generational problems in the family system that there were a lot of parenting deficits. Like, you can't give away what you haven't possessed. So I think, when we have, like you said, you build some trust and rapport, then they're ultimately looking for you to help them
Yeah.
know what to do. Otherwise, well, what the heck is the purpose of you?
Right.
Like, why would I want to come to you if you can't help me figure out what needs to happen? We have to do that within a therapeutic context. I think, like you were saying, build that trust and rapport a little bit. But you know what? Sometimes we have to talk about mandated reporting, and I never enjoy those conversations. They're not really they're necessary, and I do them. I put my big girl pants on, and I get them done.
Do they get easier over time?
Not for me. Oh, well, let me rephrase that. I'm going to rephrase that. I get better at doing them. For me, they never get easier.
Yeah.
I just get better at doing them.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy doing them. A couple of reasons. One, more often than not, the ones that we see, well, let me speak to myself. Cases in which I've had to make calls on, we're mandated reporters. We're not the investigators. So it's the suspicion. Like, we have concern that there's abuse or neglect going on. I don't think we typically see the worst of the worst in outpatient private practice, like other entities, like frontline, boots on the ground, child protective services workers. I think they see first more difficult situations than we see. That being said, I think what my experience has been, more often than not, there's not enough to really do anything. And now families are mad and they don't come back to treatment. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I try to do what I can to mitigate that and maintain relationship as much as possible. They don't always leave. More often than not, they get mad. And I get it. And I just hope in those situations I've planted some seeds and they've had more positive experiences than negative as much as possible. But that's part, even I like to think of things from an attachment standpoint. That's still part of attachment is structuring.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have structure and limits for safety to occur. And there are some things that are not safe and they cannot happen. And we have to hold those boundaries and say, no, that's a line in the sand.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Yeah. So, well, it was awesome chatting with you, Jess.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I don't know. I know you're on Instagram. So I don't know if you want to, if people want to stay in touch with Jess and her amazingness, you can follow her on Instagram. I don't know what other platforms you're on other than Instagram. Maybe LinkedIn. We've connected.
I'm on Instagram. I'm at therapist.jess, and I'm on LinkedIn. I think those are probably the best ways to keep in touch.
Well, you know what I'll do is I will, you know what, maybe you can email me I forgot to ask you for these. If you want to email me those links, I'll put them in the chats. Or I know you're in my Facebook group too, if you want to go in the Facebook group and put them in there.
Yeah.
And then I'll put them on the other channels if you want to do that. If you want to keep in touch with Jess and see what she's doing. She's very active on Instagram. I'm always amazed because I'm learning Instagram and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so good on Instagram.
Well, I've been off on my month hiatus and haven't been on much, but it's kind of a creative outlet for me. It's a little bit of self-care to make content, so it's fun.
Yeah, it's really good.
Thank you.
Cool. So if anyone is interested, I do have an online supervision group. So we meet twice a month. I do have openings right now. I also do individual supervision, and I do have a training coming up. It's an online training, 2.5 hours, called Parents in the Play Therapy Process. It's on June 25th. So there are still openings for that. If any of you are interested in finding out more about the training, I will post a link in the comments as well. So
and I'll just put a little blip in. Supervision group was so helpful for me, just to have direction and to hear what other people are doing and the direction you give them on cases that I haven't seen. And I have loved all of your trainings. You are a powerhouse of knowledge, and it has helped me so much, more than my program taught me about play therapy. I have learned at the feet of Kathy Spooner.
Oh, thank you, Jess. Yeah. Well, we do have an awesome play therapy group, and we've missed you in the group. Yeah, we have an awesome group of professionals. I think that's one of the things I like about the group modality. I like the individual as well, because you can get a deeper dive, so to speak, into really getting to the nitty-gritty things. The thing that's nice about the group is just the synergy of the group, and you learn so much from each other and sharing experiences. And we're looking at sand trays, and we're looking at video, and we're looking at client artwork and recognizing themes. And so even if it's not your client, you're still learning things in there and helping other people as well. Because honestly, you guys give each other some amazingly good feedback. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Such a good point.
And I love the diversity of the group, because so much of my supervision has just been based here in Southern Utah, but there's people from all over the US in the group when I was there, who are seeing clients with different issues that maybe I don't see as much, and all sorts of different stuff. So that's been really helpful for me too, to see just more perspectives.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I love that too, that we have people from all over. I think, to me, that's one of the silver linings of the pandemic, is that everybody is now online for the most part, and then we can connect. Like in some of my trainings, I had somebody in my attachment-based family therapy program training that I had last month from Australia. She was a trooper, man. She stayed up all night.
Wow.
It was, yeah, I've had people from Europe. So it's nice to check in and in the trainings, kind of see what people are experiencing in other parts of the world using play therapy as well.
Yeah.
And in the group, kind of checking in because we have people from all over the US in there. That really is cool. So
That's always blown my mind. Like when I've done your trainings and stuff, you do have people from all over. And like you have you're like famous. You have such far reach. People are coming to you and looking for your knowledge, and it's amazing.
yeah, yeah. I joke around with my husband and my son. Our sons are adults now. I'm like, I have friends all over now.
You do.
And they look at me and roll their eyes like, oh my gosh, my mom is so weird. So, anyways, well, thank you, Jess, for coming on and having this conversation and nerding out with me a little bit. I love nerding out with people. It's like one of
Yes.
my favorite things to do. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. If you're watching on the replay, please feel free to like and share this across your social media. And I will see you next week. Bye for now.
See ya.